What's up, you guys? So, I'm using a microphone this time because I'm outside and there's like this beautiful river waterfall right here. And I don't know if you can hear it through the microphone, but I just felt like it would be impossible to hear my voice. But at the same time, I wanted to talk in a place where I feel safe, comfortable, relaxed, and it's just really nice out here. I already gave you guys a tour, but maybe I'll do another one after I finish talking. But it's about 7 a.m. Monday morning. I barely slept last night. I was just tossing and turning and like having just crazy dreams, and like I just can't get out of my head. Because today is the day that I get my IUD removed. Birth control removed. And there's so much I could say about birth control. I've never done like oral birth control pills, but I have like a hormonal IUD, and there's so much that I could say about like how the effects and how it affected my body and like all these things, and like for the most part I didn't have a negative reaction with like having it in me for the past few years, but there have been like major consequences that people don't talk about, and there were like certain issues, like the way that it was inserted was problematic, and um, anyways, I won't talk too much about birth control. But anyways, it's a very emotional time, like an emotional topic. It's very monumental for me to take out this IUD because it means that I can become pregnant. And it means I can become pregnant with the partner that I'm with right now. And that's a huge deal for anybody. It's a big deal for me because, I wanted to be in a place where I am able to feel stable mentally, financially, like, you know, in a lot of in an emotional way that I could, you're never like ready for motherhood, but like that I could sort of see myself being like a stable mom, um, that could be that could produce like healthy, stable children to the world. And it is also very significant because spiritually, because I was raised Orthodox Jewish, and then I left the Orthodox Jewish community when I was 24. I sort of abandoned any kind of Jewish practice, any kind of, not really going to shul, not really talking, just really cold turkey, abandoned it. My partner is not Jewish, does not have any known Jewish heritage in him, and I like it that way. And um, so there's just, you know, in having a kid and bloodline and all of that family bloodline tribe is like a huge deal in Judaism. So I wanted to address whether I will be raising my kids, hopefully more than one kid. Hopefully I will be able to have kids and more than one kid. I think I will. Um, Whether I will raise them to be Jewish. And the short answer is no, but, no, but, no, but if they were to be exposed to Judaism, I'd want them to be exposed. I'd want them to be taught by my brothers, because I think that there's like some Judaism I think is better than other Judaism for me. Um, so, as I've said a lot on this channel, like, I was raised by like Iranian Jewish parents, so Sephardic Jews, and but we were raised. Um, we were basically sorry, my foot is itching, so I'm like a little distracted. But we were raised in the Ashkenazi ultra Orthodox community in LA, and then not just in LA, the Orthodox Jewish community, especially the ultra Orthodox Jewish community, the Haredi community, is very connected all over the world. my close friend right now, even my closest friend, I went to summer camp with her in Michigan, in Aguda. No, Aguda Midwest. Yeah, it was Aguda Midwest. So I went to like a Haredi summer camp with her in Michigan, and then we ended up at the same seminary in Jerusalem, in Israel. Like, it's very interconnected world. There's like this thing called Jewish geography, and I think a lot of modern Orthodox people do it too, where because the community is so connected, people are marrying within the same community. They're like, a lot of people are related. You get to know a lot of the same people no matter where you are in the world. It's a very connected community because it's just so small compared to like the world population, and it's so preserved. Like, it's not easy to convert into Orthodox Judaism. You have to be like born into it, and if you convert, it's a very stringent, hard process. So anyway, why do I not want to raise my kids in a community that is so hard to get to in the first place? So many people want to be in it, and so many people think that there's like this magical survival access granted to you once you're in that community, and like so many people want to be associated with the Orthodox Jewish community, and like they work so hard. Like, why am I giving up my rights or trying to? You don't really give up your rights as a girl because, or as you don't give up your rights with Judaism. Like, once you're Jewish, you're always Jewish. But also as a girl, like my kids, halachically will always be considered Jewish, and my daughters' kids will always be halachically considered Jewish, and so forth. Like, according to Judaism, um, uh, the religion goes according to the mom uh, for various reasons. But like, so, anyways, why won't I want to raise them with like Jewish Judaism? And the reason for that is mostly because I think that Judaism nowadays is kind of sick. Like, I don't really want my kids to be associated with it, with modern Judaism, with I don't want them to be raised by like the ideas. I think that it's sick. I think that it's traumatized. And like, I think that the Judaism that my ancestors had in Iran and that I had in my household growing up, to me, just for me, it feels way more authentic. It feels also healthier. Like, it was the Judaism that kept Jews alive and thriving and wealthy and happy and healthy for thousands of years in Persia since the Second Temple. And anyone that knows my family, like, it's a big family, and they've done really well with Judaism. Um, Sephardic Judaism in Iran, in Persia, and so forth. But like, the Judaism that I went to school with and that I was educated with was, for me, too much in the brain, in the head, and not really in the body. And that's a huge, like, factor with trauma survivors. One thing that you learn, because I've been learning a lot about trauma lately because I've been trying to heal because I want to get my IUD removed. And one thing about trauma survivors that you learn about is that they dissociate. Trauma creates dissociation. People dissociate from their bodies when they're traumatized. And unfortunately, not to blame the victim here, but like, the leaders of modern Judaism are trauma survivors. And yeah, not to like point the finger, like, my parents are trauma survivors too, but it's just very different. It hasn't been baked in for generations. The trauma was not part of the ideology, at least with Sephardic Judaism that I grew up with. Like, we didn't grow up in my household. We didn't grow up, even though my family, my dad's family that we were mostly around, like, they were very religious, very traditional from Iran, and they had customs and traditions that went back generation to generation. Like, we didn't grow up being taught that everybody that isn't Jewish is gonna secretly hate us and try to kill us. Like, that wasn't really part of the faith that I grew up with in my household. That was very much something that we were raised with in our education system, in the sort of more Ashkenazi um, education system. And that was just one part of it. Growing up, learning about the Holocaust a lot. Little children, the Holocaust was a really terrible thing, but like little children being taught about death and gory things, and it being linked to ideology, like everybody hates you and everybody wants to kill you, I don't think will create a lot of very well adjusted people. And then not only that, like, you see the trauma in like every aspect of the education system, and like the way that it's just so culty, like people are just so ideological. It's like literally people would rather sacrifice their own children than to disobey the religious authority. It's very ideological, very like kind of obsessive. And I feel like, like when I went off the derech means when you leave Judaism, in at least in Orthodox terms. I went to Beis Yaakov growing up, and I'm not to diss on my personal Beis Yaakov, but like Beis Yaakov in general. I went to Beis Yaakov, I went to Torah Semes, I went to Seminar Yerushalayim, which is a very Beis Yaakovi seminary in Israel. For summer camps, I went to Bnos Marava, I went to Aguda Midwest. I don't know, like there's just, so when I went off the derech, which is when I like left the religion, basically, um, I became I began talking to a lot of people that also went off the derech, and there's a huge difference between going off the derech as an Ashkenazi kid, just generally a kid that is born to an Ashkenazi ultra-Orthodox family, or Orthodox, or sometimes modern Orthodox, versus going off the derech as a Sephardic kid. When you go off the derech as a Sephardic kid, because your parents are not, typically, they're not as ideological. Their religion is more spiritual, it's in their body. And yeah, they might do the ideological things, but like, it's in the blood. It's more like there's less of a dissociation, usually, with the religion, at least the way that the religion is sort of brought down. There's less of a likelihood that your parents are going to disown you when you go off the derech, when you're Sephardic. And that's a huge privilege that I've had. And I'm sorry to tell people this, because this might mean that my family might face backlash from the community, and it might mean that it might mean that my family might be embarrassed, and I feel really bad. But like at the same time, I just can't not say this. Like, my family has not disowned me, and I knew that they wouldn't, and they probably will never disown me. Even if the community at large were to come and say, and because, yeah, anyways, even if the community at large, the Ashkenazi-led community were to come and say, like, yeah, you guys aren't really Jewish, you guys aren't religious enough, like, look, your child is going off the derech, and like, you're still talking to her, you're accepting her, you're still, and not only accepting, like, I went back to visit my family with my partner, who is not halachically married to me, who is not Jewish. I took him recently, a couple of weeks ago, I took him to Los Angeles to meet my family. He met my parents. They fed him. He ate at their table. They talked to him. They loved him. And granted, they did it for me. You know, they weren't picking up a goy off the street and adopting him. It was, they wanted to show me that because I told them that I'm doing this, that I'm going to Bali, that I'm going to stay here, and that I'm actually going to like start a family. And they actually took it seriously, and they were like, okay, well, Pardes is probably going to have children. She's going to have family. And like, they wanted to show me support. You know, it doesn't mean that and they were very clear about not accepting my religious path or whatever. But I had something that I don't know. I've talked to a lot of people that went off the derech at this point. Regardless of their level of zealousness of their families, Ashkenazi kids are more likely to get disowned. They're going to get disowned by their parents. Their parents, you know, they tell their parents, I have a non-Jewish boyfriend, I have a non-Jewish partner or husband. I'm going to raise my kids as not Jewish. I'm going to, uh, you know, we live in Bali, Indonesia. Like, there's no synagogue for miles and miles. There's no, not that I know of, there's no Jews that I know of. There might be Israeli tourists, but nobody is practicing here. And I like it that way. And yeah, if I was born to an Ashkenazi family, they would not accept me. In fact, my whole family would publicly condemn me. They would disown me. They would cut me off. They would do it like a cult because they don't want to get ostracized by the community. And because I'm Sephardic, I don't have to deal with that. And in fact, it is a huge, like, I can't even tell you what a blessing it is to know, to willingly take out your birth control, to know that, to start trying to have children, knowing that if something were to happen to you and or your partner, even if you don't see your family for years, like I haven't visited my family in years, in like almost 2 years. It's like knowing that even if you haven't seen your family in years, even if your family has never met your children, like if something were to happen to you or your partner, your children will be taken care of. They're going to be loved, provided for. They're part of the family. They're connected by blood, not ideology, because your family like lives in their body. At least on a spiritual level, my family lives in their body. They're not dissociated yet. And I feel like Judaism, the Jewish community at large, is led by people that have spiritually dissociated. Their mind is not there's no connection. There's like no connection between blood and ideology. And even though like Judaism is so blood, like people could also be very, very obsessed with blood and genes and genetics. Um, you know, there's like racial stuff, differentiation, and all of that, but like it doesn't translate into being, to me, like it doesn't, it just feels, it just felt very cold. Like um there's just a lot of also just weird ideological stuff that don't, they're just not common sense. People follow the leader. It's very culty. If your local rabbi were to say, okay, everybody, let's start burning our children for Molech, everybody would do it. Everybody would start burning their children for Molech. In Sephardic communities, that's less likely to happen. Although over the years, I'm sure, because Sephardic families are not in the Middle East anymore because they're growing up and being educated and raised in Western and Ashkenazi Jewish communities in the West, I'm sure that over the years they're going to become more culty and more ideological too. But at least at this point in time, generally speaking, Sephardic Jews are less likely to burn their children for Molech at the behest of their local rabbi, because Sephardic Judaism was, for the most part, more recently passed down father to son. Um, it's very different when you're taught by blood, when you're passed your spiritual identity and your ideology from your own blood, from someone that actually is like familially tied to you. It's very different than being taught by a stranger that doesn't really care about you the way that your family would. Just a very different feel. It's, again, like all mind, not body. Um, yeah. And like, I don't have even the slightest bit of guilt or sentimental sadness, mourning, none of that. I've benefited a lot from like being raised in the Jewish community, but at the same time, like I feel, and there's a lot that I've benefited from, and like people would say if Sephardic Judaism is so much better, then why haven't Sephardic Jews created the yeshivas and the school? Like, why are they going to Ashkenazi schools? Why couldn't they just create their own schools? And that's a really good question. I think probably just there's a lot of answers for that. I don't, you know, Ashkenazi Jews are much more, come from much more sophisticated backgrounds, much more, Western Judaism was born out of a much more educated, sophisticated, like enlightened culture. And they're able to do so many things that Sephardic Jews were not able to do. Sephardic Jews were just more primitive. Um, in more recent years, at least. I don't want to speak for like thousands of years ago. But so like I feel like yes, I've benefited quite a bit, but at the same time, like I would never want my kids to be raised with that Jewish education. And if my kids were to have any exposure to Judaism, I'd want them to be taught by my brothers, because my brothers are a part of a Sephardic yeshiva in Jerusalem, which is still very influenced by Ashkenazi Judaism. But as far as like influence go, like as far as connection to Sephardic Judaism, it's probably one of the most well connected to my heritage, my Sephardic heritage, which is like, to me, a Judaism that is much more common sense, much less dissociated. They have banned much fewer things. Like Ashkenazi Judaism has banned so many things over the years just to become more palatable with the times, which could be good or bad, but like it's just way more dissociated. Um, Esoteric Judaism, Kabbalah, is banned for the public. The public meaning like public Jews. Like polygamy is banned. You might say, oh, well, polygamy is so bad. Why should polygamy not be banned? Sephardic Jews have never banned polygamy. They don't do it anymore that I know of. But like 2 generations ago, my great grandfather had 2 wives, and so did his sibling. Like it was normal, and um, I don't know. I don't want to say if that's good or bad. I just want to give that as an example of like how Sephardic Judaism is a little bit less tampered with. Like there was less of like trying to interfere with it ideologically. Again, it's just more connected to whatever it was from the source, whatever was taught many, many years ago. It's just less tampered with, less control, less like dissociated to me. So that's what I have to say about it. Um, yeah, and um, I think I'm just so much better off for having been born into that. There's in general, like being Middle Eastern, like Middle Eastern culture, Persian culture definitely has a lot of flaws that I can sit and talk about a lot. And of course, like I said, my parents, relatives, like they've all been traumatized. They all had weird shit growing up. You know what I mean? But on a spiritual level, um, if I had to go with Judaism, I mean, I'm not religious, so it's not like I'm choosing any other religion. But like if I had to go with Judaism, I would go with Sephardic Judaism. Uh, although, yeah, probably gonna try to expose our kids to everything that we can, you know. But yeah, I also don't think that it's a coincidence that despite still being very inbred, Sephardic Jews are not don't have as many like terrible genetic diseases. I don't think that um I think that kind of Western medicine has conditioned people to see uh genetic diseases or like just in general like medical conditions as purely a genetic thing. I think that they've conditioned people to really dissociate all these different parts of you that are actually very connected. And your spiritual body is it's connected, like it's all connected. And people will look at a person that has an ailment in their body and just completely separate it from anything that's happening spiritually or like emotionally in that regard. Um, and I think that Sephardic Judaism doesn't do that as much. And I think the results are just so much better off because of it. It's you can just see it. You can see it, and yeah, I I feel weird like to even talk about this because I'm like I feel like I just really hope that I'm not like bothering people with this, although I probably will be bothering people with it. But like I remember when I went off the derech and I was like kind of angry, feeling angry at my religious education, and I went on 4chan because 4chan is where all like the virulent anti-Semites hang out. People that like really, really, really hate Jews and will just like hang out. I was hanging out with 4chan because it just felt really nice to be hanging out with people that have. But anyways, what I noticed was that a lot of people on 4chan were other Orthodox Jewish kids. And you can tell based on their language, like you can tell based on what they know, their language. There are certain language and ways that people talk that you could only be talking like that. And you can only recognize it if grew up in the same education system because it's just so stringent, it's so closed, like it's so much like its own little thing. So that was like something that was striking to me. Um, Maybe they were not Ashkenazi actually, who knows? But like the kind of language that we were sort of educated with. Um, yeah, I just think that like there's Judaism and there's like really great common sense. Like Judaism is probably one of the more common sense, if you just look at every religion is, if you just look at like the doctrine at face value and like what they're preaching usually, like, but there's like the being part of a Jewish community, and then on top of the spiritual aspect that I mentioned, it's just really expensive to be Jewish. It's expensive to be part of a Jewish community. There's a lot of strings attached that make, in my opinion, make people weaker, and I don't want my kids to be have to be like subservient to all those anchors, really. Like, you can't live in certain places, you can't really be much of an explorer as easily. And if you are, it's just very expensive. Kosher is very expensive. Like, my my parents' family, they're my ancestors, my dad's family. I don't know how my mom's family did it. I had to ask them, but like, they basically, uh, I mean, there was no kosher certifying agency in their country. They shechted their own animals. They butchered, halachically butchered, and or humanely halachically, like they butchered their own animals in accordance with Jewish law, um, and ate their own kosher food, and they understood all the kosher laws. Kosher is, when you actually learn about it, it's a very beautiful thing. On a spiritual level, kosher is, it's a beautiful thing. Um, and they actually understood it, and they understood it on a familial level. Like, it wasn't so corporatized where like somebody else worries about your kosher food and then you just buy it from the supermarket. Um, but like, now, if you want to keep kosher, there's less of an incentive to actually understand it, learn about it, actually think about what you eat, care about what you eat. It's all just, you go to like an overpriced, shitty restaurant that is like, has like like a mafia style kosher license that was granted to them by the OU, that nobody else in that town is able to have, because like they have a deal with the rabbis that they pay to have that kosher license, and nobody else can have a kosher license. And because they're like the only kosher establishment in town, they get to charge an arm and a leg for like garbage food. That's kosher now. That's kosher nowadays, and it's, uh, yeah. I don't really want my kids to have to be bound to it. I want my kids to be hyper aware of like what goes in their body, and learn about it, and learn about how the animals are killed that they're eating, the animals that they're eating, how they're killed. You know, kosher cares a lot about what you eat. Is it good for you? Is it good for the animal? Is it good for like kosher is, anyways. Um, so I, just common sense, not being ideological. I'd want my future kids to not be bound by religious dogma, to be able to like actually think for themselves. And my partner is like that too. He's exactly like that. And um and I would argue being that way trumps any kind of like religious culty follow the leader kind of way of thinking, because you're actually knowledgeable about, you're learning from the source, and you're learning how to think rather than what to think. Um, my partner grew up religious, not Jewish, but he thinks for himself. Um, I think that a lot of people do, and it's good to. That's like what carries us. You can have like a spiritual leader that like teaches you things, but if you're not able to ask questions, and it's just kind of like you just take everything they say at face value, what kind of religion is that? I mean, Judaism was not meant to be a followed leader, like no questions asked kind of thing, was it? Christianity wasn't supposed to either, but like all of these religions end up devolving into that because of generations of dissociated people that just turn into shitty leaders that, just do the whole culty follow the leader thing. Um, yeah, I don't want my kids to be like prioritizing dogma and like cult leadership over their own family members. I don't want any of that. I don't want that, and you see that in like very toxic communities, not just religion. Like you see that in the West, in communism or fascism or whatever you want to call it. I don't want to. You see that in politics. That's a good word to say. Politics. People are just so obsessed with this that they just totally forget this, like common sense, nature, like their body, family, like what they want. People don't know what they want. What are your instincts telling you? What is your body telling you is like the thing that you want? Do you even know what you want? Do you know who you are? Or is your whole life basically just following, parroting some cult leader? Is your whole life like, if you were to go end up in a room, there's a saying in Judaism, it's like Shuvim Panim Torah, like there's supposedly, and there's a lot of ways to look at Judaism, but like if you were to end up in a room, and I'm not just talking about Judaism right now, like politics or whatever, if you were to end up in a room with someone else that is of your religious group or political group or whatever group, and like, would you have any a lot would you how much difference would you have with them? Would your brain have been able to come up with anything original? And I'm not just saying this to be an artist, like, oh, just be original. It's really important to be your own thinker, because leaders can easily drive people off a cliff, especially a toxic leader or any kind of toxic influence. Anyone can come into your life, and I know this because I'm a very easily influenced person. You can tell from my human design that I did with Francis. Like, it's very easy for me, and I know a lot of people, to like pick up the feelings, emotions, influences, direction, ideology of the people in their environment. That's part of why I had to come and live in a place that was like kind of where I'm not very much around people in a close way. It's just me, my partner, we're around a lot of nature. I hope you didn't hear my burp. Uh, but um, part of why I needed that is because it's just really hard for me to not pick up the noise, to not pick up the noise and the direction and the emotions and all these things of, and the energy of like the people around me. Um, and if you're like that, it's kind of dangerous because anybody can come into your life and get you to do things that are bad for you, that are bad for the world, that are bad for your family members. People can tell you to um, put your life on the line for their cause, to put your children on the line for their cause. People are doing this every day. They're putting they're they're putting, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've met, and I know a lot of people from childhood that went off the derech. Do you know if you're ultra orthodox or orthodox or modern, whatever? Do you know people that went off the derech in your community? A lot of them don't talk about it. A lot of them you just will never hear from. You won't know about. They went off the derech, and uh, their families disown them. Their families tell them that we don't want to have anything to do with you now, and get, be gone. If you're not part of this religion, and you know like what that does to somebody when their family chooses the cult over them. There is no motivation to continue having a family. There's like no motivation to breed. Like, what's the point of donating your body, your existence, there to Molech? I'm sorry, your words, not mine. We learn about Molech in my education, and they talk about all these things as if it's like so far off. People sacrificing their children for idol worship. What does that even mean to you? Like, have you even thought about it? Have you ever, like, have you, I mean, maybe you did, but people are people are just so stuck in the ideology and so influenced that they won't even know how influenced they are. I don't know it. I mean, if I'm in a place for long enough, I'll start saying the same. I was in Texas for 2 years, and I started saying y'all, and I still say it to my friends in Texas when I text them. I say y'all. It's just it's just, and that's what I'm conscious of. Like, it's just impossible if you're stuck in one place for so long and you're stagnant. It's just impossible to not take in things as your own unless your heritage is just like so strong, and you're gonna pick it up. Judaism started as a nomadic religion, as a nomadic faith, and it started as a faith that was more of like a family tribe and not like a religious dogma. It was more like, here's like a set of ways that we live, a set of truths about the world, stories, scriptures, whatever. Like, here's just like a set of like guide that will, your parents give you, you give to your children, all that. And you I want my family to be nomadic too. Um, and by nomadic, I just mean the ability to be a business person, the ability to leverage things for survival, to survive optimally, to never become stuck and stagnant in where you are, never be stuck and stagnant in your ideology, always be learning about the world, learning new languages, learning different cultures. Like, I'm learning a bunch of languages. Uh, I already spoke Farsi, English, Hebrew. Uh, I learned a tiny bit of Yiddish in high school, and I learned Espanol. Now I'm still working on Espanol, Mandarin, Chinese, uh, Indonesian, and Arabic. because Arabic is easy. Because you speak Farsi and Hebrew, then Arabic is like whatever. Um, I mean, to me, that's what Judaism was represents to me is like people don't just accidentally become the most successful people in anywhere that they are. In fact, um, according to Jewish history, most Jews will never survive the next Holocaust. In fact, only a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. Like people say that Judaism is like, Jews are the wealthiest people, the most successful people, the only people that have survived for generations and generations. You learn about Jewish history, only a tiny fraction of Jews are going to make it to through the next Holocaust or whatever it is. You don't just be successful by being born into something. You don't just thrive and be healthy and prosper and live and survive by just being born into something, into a tribe. You have to actually think for yourself, understand what you're doing, what you're going for. Why do you keep Shabbat? Why do you keep kosher? Why do you do purity laws? All these things. Like, why are these things important to you? Why do you care about it? Why do you travel? There's like this, you know, a lot of people, a lot of Jews will have, like very Haredi Jews will have like a suitcase um, in their closet that they like packed, and they always have it packed and ready for when the Messiah comes, when Mashiach comes. Or I don't know how many people do that. I think my brother might do that. I don't know, but like, why do you do that? Um, there's so many communities of people that are like living a fake life. They're living a life that is not theirs, that somebody else told them to live. They're not looking at women because that's what their rabbi told them to do. Don't touch women, don't look at women, don't have anything to do with women, don't communicate with women. But then meanwhile they're like they're getting their sexual needs met in like a very self-humiliating way. And it's okay to I'm not like people are just not living the life that they want. They're living a life that somebody else told them to live. They're living a fake life. They're just being fake. And it's sad because it's like you just have this one life and then you die. Then what? What's the point of living a life that somebody else told you to live and they won't even know it? Like they won't even care if you did they won't even know if you did something differently. You think the person that told you and maybe that's not even what they had in mind. Like before my grandfather died, he he died. He was almost 100 years old, and before he died, um, he like called me over and was like Pardes, and I was visiting him. I was visiting in LA because he had had a stroke, and he said, "I just want to tell you something. I need you to marry a religious man, a God-fearing man." And I said, "Okay." And the thing is, like, if I didn't have a brain, I would have taken what he said and said, okay, well, I'm going to find the most yeshivish man that I could find, the most black hat, obviously Jewish, ultra Orthodox Torah man that I can find. If I didn't learn how to think for myself, if I hadn't traveled, if I hadn't like asked questions ever in my life, if I hadn't been forced to ask questions, and I just like went along with whatever was the stagnant thing to do, I probably would have chosen something that was wrong for me. Someone that wasn't, yeah. And like people do that every day. They'll just not think for themselves. And it's just really sad. It's sad to watch. And it's sad that people, and then they make their children do it. And they make their, and then those children make their children do it until you have just like generations of people that are literally blowing themselves up for whatever their god is. Um, what's the point? What's the point of that, dude? Literally, what's the point of religion if you're gonna do that? And like, yeah, there's so many nice things about Judaism. Um, there's successful Jews, but again, the vast majority of Jews will never make it through the next Holocaust, and you won't even know about it because they'll be gone. There are a lot of struggling Jews, of course, just like there are a lot of struggling every religion, and like you don't just be successful and happy just by being stagnant and just doing whatever was given to you, just eating whatever was fed to you. That's not the road to happiness, fame, success, whatever it is that you want in life. You know, yeah. And then another thing is like just not being raised by fear, is just not being taught by trauma, by traumatized people. Allow people to teach you that are relaxed, that have been for generations living in peace. I mean, people here in Bali, like very peaceful people. They're Hindu. They're worshiping many gods, but like very peaceful people. And that those are the kind of people that you want around your kids. People that are not traumatized, like they're not coming from a position of instability. They're spiritually not coming from instability. In this place here in Bali, it's like they call it the portal to heaven. This is where like heaven and earth meet, and all like the spiritual stuff. And you feel it wherever you go. Like there's like a huge ant crawling up this tripod right now as I'm speaking. There's wildlife everywhere, all kinds of beautiful, lovely wildlife. And you can tell from the wildlife, they are so non-threatening. Even the biggest spiders here that I showed you last time, like they're not uh, they're not venomous. The wildlife is so peaceful. The animals they are safe. They're peaceful. Like how is it that this wild looking jungle that is filled with so many different types of animal, how are they all at peace with each other and they're just happy? They're not fighting. People aren't fighting. At the end of the day, you have to just look at the facts of your life and like not judge things based on like, is this called Judaism? Is this called Hindu? Is this called whatever the religion is in that place? Islam or whatever. Technically this is a Muslim country where we are. Can you actually look around you, be in your body, not be in here, be in here, like feel what you feel. There's like a cute gecko right near me. Feel what you feel, see what you see, sense what you sense. Actually pick up your environment and start looking and analyzing and examining your life based on what is there, what is really there, what you see, what you feel, what you hear, what people are like showing you, and not just what people are telling you verbatim to think. Can you learn how to trust yourself and trust your body? And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. And that is what I will be teaching my future children, in addition to as many languages as possible. So one more thing I just want to say before signing off is that I wrote a book called House Hackers Anonymous, and everything that's in that book is what I will be teaching my future children. And it's all about survival. Not just survival, but like just mental. Like, I just had a really hard time adjusting and surviving after I left the religious community. It's really hard to go from having your life like kind of mapped out for you in every tiny aspect to all of a sudden having zero direction and having to like figure out how to live and breathe from scratch. House Hackers Anonymous basically is what I created as a guide for myself to make myself feel better. Like, hey, Pardes, if anything ever happens to us that we don't have anything to fall back on, we don't know how to make money, we don't know how to, like, this is our guide. We can read this and it tells you exactly A to Z. You're struggling, you're homeless, you don't know a single thing about making money, nothing about how to survive and how to do literally anything, how to go anywhere, how to do anything. House Hackers Anonymous. Yeah, I don't want to be too salesy, but like it is actually really good. Like, I actually think you should buy it. You should read it. You should ask someone to buy it for you. Get it as a gift. Like, I actually wish I can just give it out for free and just hand it out to people in the street here. Like, I wish I can. I met someone. I met someone that I really wished that I could give it as a gift to, because it's like you want to go from being completely struggling, especially in this era, inflation, whatever, completely struggling, not knowing a single thing about making money, surviving, to being financially free, and comfortable, and like have savings for many years and have investments for many years and like do whatever you want and be able to actually heal yourself, heal your mind and body, live according to your faith without worrying about like your survival. Like, a lot of people don't leave their community, or they don't live according to like their true what they believe, because they're dependent financially on their parents, grandparents, whatever. You want to live according to your truth, according to your religious meaning, whatever that is for you. So this book is good for that. I mean, I really highly recommend it. It's called House Hackers Anonymous, and the link will be in the bio. And anyways, hope you guys are having a great day wherever you are. And I'm gonna go and see if Andrew's awake yet, and if he got any sleep from me moving around so much. And then we're gonna go and get my IUD removed, hopefully. I'm so nervous. Wish me luck. Since I promised you a quick little tour, some stuff here. This is a web. There's some fishes. They're having a great time here, catching bugs. Here's a statue. More fish. Little fish, baby fish. The waterfall. It's beautiful, and imagine sleeping to the sound of this, how wonderful it is. It's really wonderful. I feel really blessed to be here. There's a dragonfly. 2 dragonflies. It's so pretty. It's so small.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. Where did it go? There's a frog. It's so tiny. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Ah, why isn't it moving? That's so small. Huh? Oh. There it is.